Hey everyone, and welcome to WDIM Plus, where today I get to examine two of my favorite shows of all time and break down all the Breaking Bad Easter eggs in the first season of Better Call Saul. Historically, these types of shows that build off established characters from a beloved series do not have a great track record of repeating the reverence of their original, and in the past, the end products have ranged from the animated Tracy Ullman spin-off named The Simpsons to Joey. But one show that almost immediately garnered the respect and the interest of the original fan base was Better Call Saul. A lot of the praise not only goes to creators Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould, but also to the stars of the show, and most definitely Bob Odenkirk, who plays Jimmy McGill before he becomes the eponymous character. The role was introduced to audiences in the second season of Breaking Bad as Saul Goodman, but we quickly learned that even his name has a story behind it, which is a constant for many things encompassing the character. Saul was the only main character introduced after the first season of Breaking Bad that was still alive after the series ended, so this meant that, like Jesse Pinkman, we might still get to see Saul again. Announced before Breaking Bad's last season finished airing in 2013, the idea for the series was actually pitched to Bob Odenkirk during the filming of the third season of Breaking Bad. While we do get to see some of Saul/Jimmy's life after Albuquerque, this series instead focuses mainly on how Jimmy became Saul, as the first episode is set 6 years before the first episode of Breaking Bad. Along the way, we meet new characters as well as cross paths with many that intersect with the stories told in Breaking Bad, and it is those references that I'm going to try and pick out today. I won't be picking out the obvious Easter eggs or returning characters, but rather try and break down some of the deeper references you may have missed when you first watched it, because you probably have not watched these shows as many times as I have. This is the first time I'm going to try and create a series for this channel, and I plan to do a video for each season of Better Call Saul, leading up to the 6th and final season's release in late 2021. So if you enjoyed this video and want me to keep doing these, all you really have to do is hit that like button. And if you really want to help support the channel, you can drop a comment and subscribe. Let me know what other shows and movies that you'd like me to look into, and check out our Twitter page for weekly polls that help me decide new videos. While this may be an obvious callback to Breaking Bad, the theme of Better Call Saul is actually a rearranged version of the one from Breaking Bad. Possibly by coincidence, this episode aired on February 8th, and Saul debuted in the second season and 8th episode of Breaking Bad. One of the most important new characters on Better Call Saul is his brother Chuck, who we meet in this episode and is played brilliantly by Michael McKean. McKean was actually told about the part from Walter White himself, Bryan Cranston, while they were both performing in the same play and the series was being cast. As we meet Saul in his new life after the events of Breaking Bad, we see that he has ended up as a manager at a Cinnabon in Nebraska, which is what he stated was a best case scenario to Walt in the season 5 episode Granite State. Once we get to meet Jimmy, we see that his office is in a Vietnamese nail salon, which was one of the businesses that Saul tried to convince Jesse as well as Walt and Skyler to launder their money through. The address of said salon is shown to be on Juan Thibault Boulevard, the same street that Gail Bedecker lived and eventually died on when Jesse ended the aspiring singer and sometimes meth cook apprentice's life. In possibly the most chilling reference in the pilot episode, when Jimmy throws his keyring into the tray, we can see that he uses a red keyring fob. This is the same exact type as the one used by Walt to trigger his final act in the Breaking Bad finale. Also outside the courtroom, there is a hat and coat hanging on a rack as Jimmy leaves, which are the same hat and coat that Walt would wear in his Heisenberg persona. Also, when Jimmy heads out to the parking lot to get in his car, it looks like he's going to be getting into the same white Cadillac that he drove in Breaking Bad, but instead gets into his 1998 Suzuki Esteem that we see him use until the 5th season of the show. When Saul meets with the Kettlemans, he does so at Loyola's Family Restaurant, which is featured many times in both shows as famously where Jesse and Gus first spoke. After Jimmy leaves HHM, he takes his frustration out on a trash can that we see a few times throughout future episodes. This act of frustration for not getting what he expects is the same thing that Walt did in the Breaking Bad episode 4 Days Out when he took his frustration out on a towel dispenser after learning that his cancer was in remission. Besides getting reintroduced to Tuco Salamanca in this episode, we also get to meet his grandmother, or Abuleta as he refers to her. This may be the wife of Hector Salamanca, as in Breaking Bad, Tuco refers to him as his grandfather. Also, the actress playing the part, Miriam Colon, had a very long career, and one of her most well-known parts is that of Tony Montana's mother in Scarface. Besides the main character of Scarface having obvious parallels to the Tuco character as well as Walt, actors Stephen Bauer and Mark Margolis both played parts in Scarface as well as characters that appeared in both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. The Scarface connections make sense since Breaking Bad was initially pitched to studios as showing how someone like Mr. Chips could turn into Scarface. We also see Tuco cooking, and this is a reference to him cooking for Jesse and Walt after he kidnaps them in the second season of Breaking Bad. When Tuco takes Jimmy as well as the twins out to the desert, this is the same desert location in which the infamous Say My Name speech is given by Walt in the 5th season of Breaking Bad. Besides Tuco, we also meet Nodos and Gonzo out in the desert, who who also appeared on Breaking Bad in the first 2 seasons, and both met rather gruesome fates. There's even a hint that things might not end up so good for No-Dos in this episode, as Tuco scolds him for being helpful after he talks down to Jimmy, a trait that will ultimately get him killed. After Jimmy is able to save the twins' lives, but they end up with broken legs, he is haunted by the experience and is unable to concentrate during a conversation with a woman. This is similar to how Walt is unable to concentrate on anything in class after he is responsible for the death of Crazy 8 during Breaking Bad's first season. At his office, we see that Jimmy uses matchbooks to advertise, and this is one of the many ways he does this throughout both series. While Jimmy is trying to get a hold of Nacho, after he believes that he kidnapped the Kettlemans, he uses a public payphone that is covered in graffiti, but one tag looks very familiar. This is because the same one was seen in Jesse's house in the 4th season of Breaking Bad, and JPI may in fact stand for Jesse Pinkman. When Jimmy is taken in by the police, after they believe he is involved in the kidnapping, he tells them he has bad knees, which he also references in his first episodic appearance in Breaking Bad. We learn throughout the season that this ailment is no doubt due to his days as Slippin' Jimmy and staging accidents. When Jimmy finally finds the Kettlemans, they are out in the middle of nowhere hiding in a tent that is the same colors as the Winnebago that Walt and Jesse used to drive out in the middle of nowhere to cook meth. Although it has not been confirmed that this is the first time Jimmy uses the alias in his life as a hustler, in the intro of the episode, this is the first time on the series that he uses the name Saul Goodman. Towards the end of the episode, Jimmy saves a man from falling off a billboard, and we soon learn that this was also a con to get more clients by filming Jimmy save the man's life. This actor, Eddie J. Fernandez, appeared in the 2nd episode of the season in Jimmy's office as well, but is also seen in the 3rd season of Breaking Bad working for the cartel. The episode title refers to a figurine made by the company Hummel that is shown in the episode. On the 3rd episode of Season 4 of Breaking Bad, we see that Marie is back to stealing and she steals a Hummel figurine from an open house. When Jimmy visits Chuck in the hospital, a nurse played by actress T.C. Victoria Warner tells him she is calling security. She also played a nurse in the 4th season episode in which Brock had been poisoned and Jesse is frantic to see him. This is no doubt the same hospital, as the same blue and white tiles can be seen on the floor in both shows. During this episode, Jimmy is watching Matlock to gain some fashion tips, and the episode he is watching may actually be a reference to the show's relationship to Breaking Bad. Besides the fact that this particular episode of Matlock, named The Don, deals with organized crime, the prosecutor in the episode was a guest star that would later get their own series, known as Jake and the Fat Man. Similar to how Saul started as a character on Breaking Bad and was then given his own series. The retirement home that Jimmy visits is named Casa Tranquila. This is the same nursing home that will later be the home of Hector Salamanca, as well as the place that Walt is able to kill both him and Gus in the shocking Season 4 finale of Breaking Bad. This episode is also the first appearance on Better Call Saul of Stacey Armentrout, Mike's daughter-in-law. She was also seen briefly in Breaking Bad, but played by a different actress in the 3rd season episode Full Measure. Similar to her on-screen mother in the prior episode, this is the first appearance of Kaylee Armentrout, who was featured on Breaking Bad but played by a different actress. In the bar scene, after Mike closes it down, he tells the bartender that he is moving to ABQ, New Mexico. The bartender wishes him well, but warns him that there are tarantulas there. A tarantula was shown in the 5th episode of the 5th season of Breaking Bad as being found by Drew Sharp and then kept by Todd Alquist after he murders him. While Mike is being driven by the 2 police officers that killed his son, he tells them that he knows they did it and that it was for a stupid reason because they were scared for what his son might do. This might be a hint as to why Mike is adamant about not killing the individuals on the list in the 5th season of Breaking Bad, as Lydia's desire to kill them simply to tie up loose ends is the opposite of Mike's view that they do not need to be killed for what they might do, which is to turn on their organization. When I first watched Breaking Bad, I always thought that this move was against Mike's character, to not want to kill these people just to be sure, but it makes sense now knowing that it was a similar situation to what happened to his son. When Mike goes to the Kettleman's house to search for the money they stole, he finds it under their bathroom sink. Jesse also hid the meth that him and Walter made that was sold to Gus under the sink in his apartment. In this episode, Jimmy compares the Kettlemans to Maude and Ned Flanders to Kim, who are characters from The Simpsons. As I mentioned earlier, The Simpsons are a spin-off show that was created from characters first seen on The Tracy Ullman Show, similar to how Better Call Saul is a spin-off of Breaking Bad. There is a shot of foreshadowing in this episode that is similar to one used in Breaking Bad, when Jimmy is sitting under the Most Wanted posters and the camera sticks on his face directly under him, foretelling his future since one day his face will be on one of those posters as well. This is similar to the episode of Breaking Bad named ABQ, in which Hank passes around a donation tub with a picture of Walt that lingers under the Most Wanted posters, as he too would end up on the same wall. The name of the episode is a reference to the Racketeer, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act, which is ultimately the federal law that was used on Skyler in Breaking Bad once Walt was found to be a criminal mastermind, and would have been used to arrest Jimmy/Saul if the feds would ever find him. We see Jimmy after he passes the bar and has graduated law school from the University of American Samoa. This may be a bit of bad continuity with Breaking Bad, as in that show, We actually see said degree, but for one thing, the name on it is Saul Goodman, not Jimmy McGill, which could make sense given the character's proclivity for misdirection, but it was also issued in 1984, long before the events shown in this series. The name of the episode is a reference to the sandwich that Mike brings to the protection job he is hired to do. This is the same type of sandwich that he brings on a stakeout with Jesse in the 4th season episode Cornered. We learn that Nacho's real name is Ignacio when Mike breaks down what he learned about him to Price. Ignacio is one of the names Saul mentions when he is dragged out to the desert by Walt and Jesse, and this no doubt implicates him and another character we meet later in the series in the events that finally turn Jimmy into Saul. The tirade that Chuck goes on about how Jimmy will never be his equal is very similar to the one Walt goes on about how Jesse will never be his equal after Jesse cooks his own batch of meth in the 3rd season episode named Green Light. In the first act of the episode, we see Jimmy calling out numbers at a bingo hall, where he eventually loses his cool due to the letter B being selected over and over again. At one point, he mentions Belize and that he has heard it is a beautiful place. The next time we hear him mention Belize, in the 5th season Breaking Bad episode Buried, he has a much different opinion of it, as he uses it as a metaphor for killing Walt's DEA brother-in-law, Hank. When Jimmy tells Marco about being a lawyer in New Mexico, Marco comments that he should be driving a white Cadillac, which is the type of vehicle Saul does end up with in Breaking Bad. There's a really funny scene in which it is obvious that Jimmy and Marco have tricked a couple of women into sleeping with them by convincing them that Jimmy is Kevin Costner and Marco is his manager. In the 3rd season Breaking Bad episode Abby Huey, we hear Saul tell a portion of the story to Walt to convince him to launder his money through a laser tag establishment. Also in that episode of Breaking Bad, Jesse and Jane go to a Georgia O'Keeffe exhibit, and Jimmy mentions Georgia O'Keeffe in this episode as well. At the end of the episode, we see Jimmy get the pinky ring that Marco used to wear, which is an important prop for his Saul Goodman persona, and we see him wear the ring throughout the series. As this is the 1st season finale of Better Call Saul, it shares a similarity with the 1st season finale of Breaking Bad, as that is where Walt would first wear his black hat and sunglasses, which were also props used by his Heisenberg persona. Well, those are all the Breaking Bad references I saw in the 1st season of Better Call Saul, but let me know in the comments if I missed any. Don't forget to like and comment if you would like me to continue the series and release a video for each season of Better Call Saul. And remember, I have another channel where I release videos weekly as well about sci-fi series and films. So check that out for more content. I will put a link in the description and at the end of this video. Thank you very much for clicking on this video, and I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?